Excellent. All right. Well, we are ready to kick off day 2 of the Premium Cigar Association's Policy Summit. Day 1, just as a quick recap, was a live and in-person event that we held at the U.S. Capitol. And today, we are doing both in-person here at the PCA headquarters townhouse next to Capitol Hill and broadcasting live wherever you may find Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. I am Scott Pierce, the Executive Director here at the Premium Cigar Association. And it is definitely my privilege to welcome everybody to this policy summit today, focusing on international policy. Yesterday was a big focus on domestic U.S. policy and what types of policies, regulations, and other challenges are affecting the premium cigar and pipe industry. And today we're taking a great next step from what we started last year in looking at international policies from everywhere from our neighbors to the north in Canada all the way over into Asia, Australia, New Zealand, and other places with a big wave, Europe and Central and South America, of course. Why international policy? This is a great question. We've noticed over not just recent years, but long trends over the course of more than a decade now of a lot of anti-smoking and anti-tobacco policies. And they begin to germinate in various different countries and regions throughout the world. And the challenge with that is, while it's easy to be isolationist in some ways, unfortunately, bad policy is very much like a cockroach. They multiply and it's very hard to kill them. And then they start encroaching upon our shores and other shores across the world. So our mission here as a Premium Cigar Association is to grow the business of specialty tobacco retailing, not just here in the United States, but across the world. We want to ensure that every citizen of this beautiful planet has the opportunity and access to beautiful handmade premium cigars and pipe tobacco, and the opportunity to enjoy that in a welcoming environment. We know that these are adult products enjoyed by adults. And so we really want to ensure that the right policies are enacted and put in place no matter where you are in the world. We believe it is a fundamental right for every adult to be able to enjoy a beautiful handmade premium cigar or some delicious pipe tobacco as well. So I just wanted to give a brief comment here and recognize the work of Joshua Bursky, the Deputy Director here, who also heads all of our government affairs activity, and the team of Glenn Loop, who is the Director of our state advocacy, and Ryan Parada. Special thanks to Ryan for all of his work in putting together this International Policy Summit and managing all of this. Don't know if anybody saw the press release, but I would like to take a moment here to recognize and congratulate Ryan. Ryan's done a tremendous amount of work over the past couple of years since joining PCA out of graduate school. And we've promoted him to a senior manager of government affairs and now international policy as well, as we look to embark upon greater involvement in the international community and ways in which we can impact policy and fight against bad policy for all of our brothers and sisters and lovers of the leaf across the world. So please pay attention, ask questions, contact us, myself, Josh, Ryan, Glenn, for any questions you might have, ideas you might have, challenges that are percolating in your countries. If there's any way that where PCA should and could be involved in your home country, please let us know. Just take one moment before I kick this off and hand it over to Mr. Ricardo Lopez of Honduras. Recently, Josh and I, along with the PCA president of the board, Greg Zimmerman, were able to go to Intertobacco in Germany. And Josh and I presented there. And one of the great things that we have that we've been able to use here in the United States is a lot of research that the U.S. government itself has undertaken on the use of premium cigars. That research has led to a significant amount of progress and victories for the premium cigar industry, notably 3-0 against the FDA in lawsuits and a myriad of other policies and taxes we've been able to kill. This research shows that children under the age of 18 are not smoking cigars. It shows that the behavioral patterns of smoking and enjoying cigars is not indicative of anything that is addictive. And they cannot see any sort of negative or deleterious health effects or public health outcomes as it relates to the standard regular usage of premium cigars. With this data, we have been able, like I said, to achieve great successes here in the U.S. market. Our goal with this International Policy Summit is, again, combining like minds so that we may figure out ways in which we can use the same tactics and opportunities and data, scientific data, to enable our international counterparts to achieve similar types of advances and progress. So with that, it is my honor to introduce Mr. Ricardo Lopez, who is with the Embassy of Honduras. I just would like to mention I am smoking a beautiful Honduran cigar right now from CLE. But I will now turn the time over to Ricardo for his remarks and few words. And thank you, everybody, for your attention and for your participation. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Greg Zimmerman, President of the PCA, Mr. Scott Pierce, Executive Director of PCA, Ambassador Sonia Guzman of the Dominican Republic, other guests, and friends. It is my pleasure to be here with you today representing the government of Honduras in this International Policy Summit organized by our friends of the Premium Cigar Association that are a strong ally to our country and cigar industry. The cigar industry has nearly a 300-year history in Honduras, and it is now an intangible cultural heritage of Honduras due to the impact in the social and economic development of our country. Since its origins in the Copan area, lands of the ancient Maya civilization, a type of wild tobacco called copaneco was smoked by the Mayan Indians, and they are considered the inventors of tobacco smoking. Honduras is a vibrant country for growing tobacco and making cigars. And it is needless to say that our cigars far exceed the reputation and stand by their great quality and diversity that we provide the world. We have in our country a unique soil and adequate climate to produce the highest quality of cigar tobaccos. Currently, Honduras is the third leading exporter of cigars, shipping around 60 to 70 million handmade cigars per year, and this is only to the US. Cigars are currently our fifth main product of exportation, only behind coffee, palm oil, shrimps, and bananas. And also, of all the cigars that Honduras exports, around 90% of them have the USA as their final destination. This consolidates the North American market as our strongest ally and partner. This industry is also essential to our economic development of the country, providing more than 100,000 of formal employments in semi-rural areas, of which some work directly in tobacco farms and cigar factories. Besides, this industry is also benefiting many other indirect jobs, like the ones who engage in trade, carpentry, and transportation. Honduras has reported a significant yearly increase in the exports of cigars to the world. For example, in the year 2020, we exported $166 million. In the year 2021, that increased to $190 million. And according to our data, in the year 2022 up until the month of August, we are exporting $140 million. There are generations of families with an expertise in the developing of tobacco and blending artisanal cigars, which make our products so special to the international market. It is also important to note that with technological improvements, research, and experimentation in seeds of tobacco fermentation, the quality of improving exponentially has increased in Honduras, and now you can enjoy a high-quality 100% Honduran cigar. Finally, I would like to thank the hospitality of the Embassy of the Dominican Republic in the reception last night, and for our friends here in the Premium Cigar Association. Honduras sincerely appreciates your work, which focuses on protecting the cigar economy in our region that is key for the stability of Honduras, Central America, and the Caribbean. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm Glenn Luke, the Director of State Advocacy for the Premium Cigar Association, and this International Policy is our second presentation to address the truly global issues confronting this industry. This panel discussion, we've got three dear friends that are joining us from far and wide. around Carlito Fuente of the Fuente Cigar Company. Hello, Carlito. Thank you for joining us. I know you're busy down there. Abe Flores of PDR Cigars. I think you're in the Dominican today, aren't you?
Yes. Yes, I am. Mhm.
And Omar De Frias of Fratello Cigars, who's in the United States and joined us last night at the ambassador's residence for a truly special moment. We're going to chat about that in just a moment. In just spirit of time, and I know Carlito is busy on the farm down there, literally on the farm. So Carlito, I want to start with you. Put for just a moment your family's history aside. You're the godfather of this industry in so many ways. Could you just chat for a moment about the true origins, the original origins of the cigar industry in the Dominican Republic? Unmute, Carlito. Unmute.
I did. I put it on mute earlier. I didn't want you to hear the roosters crowing or the horses. I did the best I could. I am now, coincidentally, with a group of about 15 representatives, ambassadors, and so forth, very influential people from Israel here in the Dominican Republic. I just returned from our Cigar Family Charitable Foundation for them to see the work that is being done by so many cigar lovers around the world. If I'm shaking, it's because I've been holding my phone up with my left arm for the last minutes. I'm not prepared, but it was very important that I'm on this call. First of all, I want to mention, I do not represent the Dominican Republic. I represent a cigar maker born into this industry, born in 1954 into a home, the same home my grandfather worked in the back of his house, making cigars, and my father was born into. We moved to Dominican Republic in 1980 to Santiago de los Caballeros, second largest city. Honestly, Glenn and everybody who's listening, transportations were Honda 50s, and you were lucky it was a Honda 60. There were many horse and carriages on the road, many mules. My father bought a 1979 Datsun 120Y. And we commuted in that Datsun. The cigar industry was in its pampers. But going back in cigars in history, this is where cigar tobacco was discovered. When they landed in the Caribbean, the Europeans, they landed in the island of Hispaniola. It has the oldest cathedral, the oldest university, the oldest city in the New World. Tobacco's been the culture so much more that our Congress, Senate, and signed by the president, made cigars and tobacco part of its culture, part of its social DNA, which is huge. And I'm not going to get into the numbers of the hundreds of thousands that work directly and so forth, in the industry and outside the industry and what it represents. That's up to a government official, someone else, to give that information. But it's huge. What I do want to say, that you're in Santiago today, when you come to that same city, it's a developing and bustling city with traffic, with the newest automobiles, with sports cars. So much so, I remember cigar makers waiting in line 2 blocks long so they could get good work. Today, you have to recruit them. You have to go to high schools, and you have to go to universities to find them and train them, because there's so much progress through this cigar industry, because Santiago was built on the cigar industry. Our greatest hotel was built in the boom of the cigar industry. It has changed so much. Cigar makers' iPhones and Apple are much more advanced than the one I have. But Greg Zimmerman mentioned something I think is very important, because you have to know where you come from and know your history. I remember when California passed this big tax and started putting regulations on enjoying cigars. California, USA. And my friends, specifically Richard Merrifeld, said, "You Americans are crazy. Who ever heard of such a thing, restricting people like this? That will never happen in Europe." Well, what starts in California is like, Mr. Zim, it's like a cancer, like roaches. And it's spread. Today in Europe and many places, No, think of like Irish pubs. You can't enjoy a cigar. Think of so many places in Europe that were so famous. The most important thing that I see is that this coalition between CRA, PCA, the U.S. organizations, the Europeans' right to enjoy cigars. And I just had a group of ambassadors from Israel who want to build cigar clubs and do things. And adults deserve the right to enjoy cigars. What it's done for the economy, it's been said 100 times, and you can look it up. Cigars are part of this economy, but more important, it's part of its culture. It's part of its religion. It is identified with the country. It's like removing, how in the hell is somebody going to decide to remove the stars and stripes from a U.S. flag? Well, don't take the cigar away from our family, from our country, and for what we love so much, that has helped all of us to progress together. Just my few words. Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you, Carlito. Abe, you're sort of the middleman of this.
I got to cut out. I'm sorry. Just apologize. Please forgive me. I'll try to listen, but I'm probably going to break up, but I do have to leave. I have a lot of guests with me waiting, and I got to do what, so I apologize.
Before we jump to Abe, then, since you've got to leave real quickly, Carlito, how many people does your company employ in the Dominican Republic? Just yours?
Approximately 3,000 directly.
And you've got a relatively new expansion of your factory there. Can you just chat for just a couple of seconds before I go to Abe about what they're doing in the new factory and what that means for your production?
Well, it's making cigars is a very it's a democracy, if you would say, a real true democracy, because each premium handmade cigar, from the moment the seeds are selected and you plant them, and it's been said many, many times through all the different steps over many, many years before that product is enjoyed, it goes between 300, 350, 400 pairs of hands. It depends on the manufacturer and the time and so forth. And it takes many, many years. And everything is manual, made by hand, made by artisans. Mostly they're women. Many of them are single moms that their family, their children depend solely on the industry of cigars and growing tobacco. Now, let me tell you something. You hear all this shit about immigration and everything. You want to have immigration in the United States? Fuck with the cigar industry. You're going to have the United States is going to become 56 states. I guarantee you. And I was with Senator all the senators, Menendez and Rubio, and I told them the same thing. Wake up, America. And the same thing with Europe. Wake up.
Thank you, Carlito, for those profound and direct words.
Hey, bro, you know what?
Abe?
Hey, let me tell you what. At my age, it's like you said, you said it's like the Godfather, but I think I'm the old man in the industry. I used to be the baby. But I don't have time to go through all the shit and all the politics and all the bullshit. Just get to the fucking facts and say the things what it is and everything. And what we have to do is educate, educate, educate. Because everyone who comes to visit us, from the U.S. government, from senators, from congressmen, from their staff, they go, oh, I get it. This is not the same as a cigarette. You're not our enemy. It's just education, education, education. I want to thank the PCA, the CRA, and now the Cigar Rights of Europe, all the podcasts, everyone who's working very, very hard together to just give out the truth and explain what this beautiful, passionate industry is all about. That's been around for 500 years. This is not something new. And it's part of the culture of America, United States, in every country from Canada all the way down to the Amazon.
Well, getting out the truth is now a great byline for this entire summit. So thank you for providing that.
Thank you. I apologize that I have to run, but I've got a lot of support coming from Cigar Family. Those are our kids, and they're here to support, and I have to make sure I do the best I can.
Been there, done that. It's a beautiful place. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, my colleagues. Thank you, my friends. Bye-bye, everyone.
Abe, your factory is there. You've been there. You're sort of the one of the younger ones that have blossomed in this industry in the Dominican Republic. Can you just chat a while about your personal origins of producing great handmade cigars in the Dominican Republic?
Well, we started manufacturing in 2004. Can you guys hear me? Want to make sure. Okay. Before that, I worked in for internet company or a chain of cigar companies, retail stores called Tinderbox. That's really where I learned. I really fell in love with tobacco and the whole United States. Before that, my family comes from Bonao, where we grew tobacco down there. I learned a lot from my grandfather, and when I came to the United States, I always wanted to be in the cigar industry. And going to Tinderbox really opened up the doors for me to get into making my own product, to be able to sell and produce in art form in the United States and globally. I've been here now. My company started in 2004. Now it's 2022. You know, we've had our ups and downs. You know, at one point we had over almost 1,500 employees. And then the FDA regulation 2016 kind of affected a lot of my manufacturing and sales. We reduced, and now things, you know, the pandemic came in, but you know, now we're growing again, and thank God. So,
Can you talk a moment about what the free trade zone in the Dominican Republic means to the cigar industry as really a government instrument to help this industry? Can you talk a little bit about the background of the zone?
the free trade zone was designed so that it's pretty much its own country. We have our own set of rules, our own set of everything. We're not bound by the Dominican government in the sense that any business outside the free trade zone has to pay local tax, has different set of rules about labor. It's a little bit not controlled, you know, like stores and bodegas and things like that. It's like a little bit all over the place, but within a free trade zone, everything is organized. Everything is, you know, OSHA safe. Everything is, it's about quality. It's about manufacturing and giving jobs to the Dominican Republic. And that was developed here so we can, the president here, or I think it was Balaguer back in the day, wanted to set up something very attractive for business companies outside to set up their homes here in the Dominican Republic and bring labor and bring jobs to the Dominican Republic. Because back then, all you had was either farming and a lot of hand work labor stuff, but it was no growth. When the free trade zone came into Santiago, as Carlito said, it changed night and day. Santiago, if you look 30, 40 years, or 50 years, 40 years ago, was a small little town with nothing. You know, you only had the monument, and then now it's a metropolitan, very metropolitan areas. We're developing new hotels left and right. Hilton, I think it's going to be Hyatt, another new Marriott. It's airport. The airport came in here. It's we're having international flights directly, not for just the United States. We're doing international to South America, to Latin America, to Europe, direct flights to Spain, direct flight to everywhere. The tobacco, and that was all because of the tobacco business and the free trade zone. That's it. That changed this town. It's night and day. Oh, and we're getting a how you say, it's a train, a high-speed train developed now, because the president that we got now is from Santiago, and he wants to make sure that we have fast transport from Santo Domingo, because Santo Domingo was like the hub of the Latin America, but they want everything to come from Santiago to Santo Domingo faster. They want to be able to give us faster access, to have people from Santo Domingo come to Santiago and experience everything here in Santiago. So we're going to have a nice train system, not just like United States, that goes from Santiago straight to Santo Domingo.
So we could literally surmise that all of that is because the Dominican Republic has declared a premium handmade cigar as a national heritage product. Everything you're describing is the economic spinoff of one industry making one product just like this. And by the way, Abe, I'm smoking one of yours that you provided last night for the reception.
Thank you.
But you're saying that all that economic activity is totally revolved around the growth, the stability of the premium cigar industry in the Dominican Republic. Is that a fair statement?
That is a very fair statement, because even the president that we have now, Binader, that we thank, had to put a stamp, a staple, a nail on the ground, say, admit that if it wasn't for tobacco, Dominican Republic would not be where it's at right now, you know? So that's the reason he had to do something. We Pro Cigar, I'm a Pro Cigar member, we've been fighting for many years to make it a national product like rum and things like that. It's like, now he said, we have to make this and we have to protect this. We have to protect this as our heritage. And without this is like a right arm of the Dominican Republic. We have to protect our this product, and this, from coffee to rum and tobacco has to be one of the staples of the Dominican Republic. So that's what he did, and he worked at it, and he certified it, and nobody can touch it.
Thank you for emphasizing that. Now, Omar, you're sort of the new kid on the block, but it helps being a 7'5" Dominican.
6'9". But glad I'm going to let you guys go because I have a factory tooth to run. Thank you very much. Love you guys.
Thank you,
Bye.
Omar, describe the
Yes, sir.
origins of your history with the Dominican Republic. Chat about the origins of your cigar company, what brought you to this industry. You obviously, I don't want to get in front of you in terms of your comments, but a huge personal, professional choice that you and I have talked about many times in terms of abandoning your comfy federal job to put your soul where your passion is, and that was making great cigars. So just chat about the origins of your company and then evolve into your relationship with the Dominican Republic.
Well, thank you so much, guys, for having us over here, and obviously hearing a little bit about the story of all of us, and obviously not only the struggles but the opportunities that all of these situations present. A little bit about me. I was born in Puerto Rico, and at the tender age of 9 months, I went to the Dominican Republic with my family, where we grew up, and I had the opportunity to go to college. Went to college in the U.S., Rochester Institute of Technology. Been a smoker since I was 16 years old. Grew up next to a retail tobacco store in Santo Domingo. And I think that's where it all happened for me. I was fascinated by it. My grandpa used to smoke cigars in that store. Every single time I would go to the basketball court, because I am 6'9", but not because of that, I would play basketball. I love it. But every time I would go to the basketball court, I see the whole group, just a whole bunch of people smoking cigars and nice sombreros, big cars, and I was fascinated by it. I was so fascinated, I would go in multiple times and ask the guy, say, hey, can I buy a cigar? And the guy would look at me cross-eyed a little bit and be like, get the hell out of here, man. You're going to literally get myself killed and my family killed. Your mother would assassinate me if I sell you a cigar at 15. But I kept on going in, and I because I was fascinated, and he finally brought me in, and there was a winchero who was doing his artwork, putting tobacco together, and I couldn't believe that a whole bunch of dry leaves of tobacco that you can just get this beautiful cigar. So I started getting into it, and my passion grew. And when I was in college, and I was always that guy. I was always the cigar guy. It's like, hey, yeah, cool, Mark, the guy smoking cigars in the back, or we're in the dorm and outside of the dorm room and whatnot. So my trajectory took a different path. I ended up accepting a position working for NASA in Washington, D.C. They were looking for a program management position, and I ended up out of 400 plus applicants, I ended up being the one that was selected for it. So I was pretty lucky about that. And I spent 12 years at NASA. And during those 12 years, I spent about 4 years where I decided in around 2013 to start this journey into cigars and premium cigars. And so, quite honestly, I didn't think I was going to be able to leave, the federal government to do this full time, but it ended up, being the situation where I left NASA at the end of 2016. While in the worst regulations of the premium cigar industry, my business was still growing. I was on the road. I was talking to a lot of customers, and the rest is history. Now we're in about 950 retailers in the U.S. and about 25 countries are representing Fratello. So it's a beautiful journey so far.
Now, you weren't in the business during what is purported to be the first boom of the 90s, but you were and are in the business during what has been classified as the second boom, which is really facilitated by the pandemic. The pandemic ended up boosting production, boosting demand for just about everybody. Everybody was saying, we're selling everything we can make. How did the pandemic affect your business?
Obviously, I was a little bit different from most people during the pandemic. When the pandemic happened, a lot of people hunkered down, especially I'm a 85-90% brick and mortar brand. And a very small part of my business was coming from online, which that is definitely not the case in this industry. Most of our sales, or most sales that happen in our industry, do happen through a lot of the online portals, and which also have brick and mortar stores, and are great partners for us. But my reality, that's why I kind of never really lost a beat, especially when the regulations hit in 2016, as everybody kind of like wiggle around. I was still growing. The issue with the pandemic, though, is that for 3 months, I lost roughly 70% of my business overnight, because the people that were the retailers that were open had enough product, but they weren't sure if they were going to close. The retailer brick and mortars that closed, obviously, they needed to figure out a way to get their cash flow to be positive after they started reopening and getting all that stuff. So that whole process lasted about 3 months, and then obviously after that, then we started. Once stores started to open, then our business started to grow. And yeah, there's no question, obviously, that the pandemic had a lot to do with the growth, but we outpaced the growth of the industry by literally double in 2021. So we doubled our business in 2021, and we're up about 48% so far in 2022. So it's been amazing. I do obviously attribute a lot of this growth to obviously what has happened with the pandemic, but also the fact that we're 9 years in business now, and heading closer to our 10-year anniversary next year. So.
Now, I read in the cigar media that you've picked up a lot of distributors worldwide. Even though the United States is predominantly the market for your cigars, and most cigars coming out of the Dominican Republic, Honduras, and Nicaragua, what do you think the prospects are for your growth, for your company, and the Dominican market as a whole, beyond the borders of the United States, Asia, Europe, perhaps the Middle East? What's that represent for your company, and you think the industry as a whole?
I think the growth is literally just starting for our overseas accounts. I feel like you can never always just put all your eggs in one basket. The U.S. obviously is and represents well over 80+% of all the imports, globally, not just for cigars, for everything. The reality for our company and for our industry is that the outlook is looking incredible. The imports continue to grow. We just came back from Intertobac, where I did have a chance to see Scott and the PCA team doing a great job there, and just understanding a lot of some of the things that are great from that show, and the things that obviously can translate into the things that we do. But the reality is that there's still so much growth. We are a very small brand in comparison to a lot of the others and a lot of the competition that we have. So we still have a lot of ground to gain in the U.S. But we cannot only rely on one specific market to grow our business, especially now that there are so many issues with other countries that export primarily to Europe, where there's not a lot of there's not enough product. Especially with the Cuban market and the situation in the Cuban market not being able to supply enough for the demand that's happening around the world. They just haven't been able to keep up, and so we are. We're right now literally processing orders for Iceland, Cyprus. We're processing orders for France. So it's incredible. The trade show in Intertobac and our world partners are literally thirsty for more product, and we're giving it to them.
When people think about the premium cigar industry, they often just think about the roller, those sitting in the factory floor and rolling the great cigars. But obviously, the industry is much, much more than that. It's an entire supply chain, as we call it, from seed to shore. Now, your background, you're an accounting and economics kind of guy on the sidebar interest to your cigar interest. Can you describe a bit about what you think the industry means to the supply chain? From the agricultural side through when the time the cigars hit the port of Miami for global distribution, national distribution. Chat about just a little bit about what you think the industry means to an entire supply chain.
My God, we have when people talk about this industry, they don't see that there are so many areas that are obviously affected by it, right? I mean, Carlito was very clear about some of the things that happen, with the people that he employs directly on the ground, what's happening in his in his factory, what's happening when he, finalizes that box, puts the product in, puts it on the ship or puts it on the plane, sends it to the U.S. Then there's an entirely a massive second part of this business, right? And that part I'll speak to it plainly. I mean, we're talking about the moment that the product lands, if you don't have abundant warehouse, immediately the 40 cents per cigar, you got to pay that 40 cents cigar to Uncle Sam and get that money in, get your product to your warehouse. Once it's in the warehouse, then obviously the planification on how you push it out. What are the channels of distribution that you have? Who are the people that are involved with it? Not only we employ 3 people that are direct for Fratello to be, sales executives out on the road covering 3 major areas. But there are brokers in this industry that depend on also utilizing different brands like myself, like, PDR and other brands that utilize another source to be able to get this product out to them. But it doesn't stop there. What about the new emerging cigar clubs that are growing in our industry, and the people that we are putting out subscription services and accessing a new clientele that not necessarily wants to go to the brick and mortar all the time, wants to have that as an option, but also wants to smoke more cigars and gets, subscribed to a service that gives them in particular. And so, but it doesn't end there. Then where's the marketing, right? Like, where's the collaborations that happen once the product lands here? It's not just about, okay, we just presented with Fratello, but we may be doing a collaboration with a gin company, and then what is the impact with that? Or we may be able to present products at the tobacco company in Pennsylvania and collaborate with another brand and bring that distribution together with 2 different people doing an event there. And so there's so many different layers, and that doesn't even touch upon the surface of everything that goes behind it, right? Like the marketing plan and the marketing companies that are involved in continuing to push and present the branding aspect of the house. The motors of distribution is just massive, right? And so there are so many areas that literally we in this industry we touch upon, from customs brokers to truck drivers to people that broker products for multiple brands to collaborations with coffee industry. There are so many different areas in this industry that I think is so incredibly valuable to understand what would be an impact into our industry and how it impacts so many other people.
When you started your remarks, you alluded to 2016 when the final regulations came out of the FDA targeting premium handmade cigars. Obviously, you're not a large company, and at the time that we were preparing for the litigation, an economic impact analysis was done on these regulations, and it said that we were one of the few that the cost of compliance would 100% equal the profit margin of every cigar company. I just want you to say, for the record, that I don't know exactly how big you are, but I got an idea. I would classify you as a small business within the realm of the cigar industry. Just chat for a moment about what the threat of those regulations meant to you personally? I mean, you put your professional career that you already had on the line to enter this industry. What did the threat of those regulations mean to you personally? What was going through your mind when those rules rolled out, and before we ever were able to roll them back through the course of litigation? But what was going through your mind when those regs came out?
There is something that needs to be very clear about not just the cigar industry, but about everything. The biggest threat that any industry and any business faces is regulation. Period. End of story. It's not taxes, it's regulation and the ability for companies, not just cigar companies, but for companies to be able to to register, to the ease access of being able to start doing business without a whole bunch of like red tape and things to do. So regulation is probably the worst thing that can happen to any industry, hands down, period, end of story, under a healthy economy. Okay. So when I saw those regulations, I was, I'm not gonna lie, I was doing great. I was like GS15 in the federal government. I had a great job. But I knew I could do more if I had more time. So I did. I quit NASA in 2016, at the end of 2016, to basically double down full time on Fratello. And we didn't miss a beat. Contrary, we actually grew because I was only selling cigars basically on the weekends, staying over at Glenn Loop's house down in Roanoke, and continued to peddle cigars after that. So it was one of those things that for small companies like myself, it can crush you. But I'm also not an idiot. I left NASA because I did review the regulations. I did go through some of these things with some lawyer friends, and the one thing that I saw with those regulations is that you could probably put a bulldozer through the regulations with the amount of like flaws that it had. And so I knew we were going to fight it. I knew the industry, could stand a chance to win. But the one thing that I did know, because of my work in the federal government, is that everything moves slow. So the whole idea that we were going to be out of business in 2018 to me was, not as likely. But that was me. That was me, just because I know that the way you fight, horrendous regulations and idiotic situations like we experienced in 2016 is through litigation. And that's where PCA and CRA and everybody, just all the coalitions, did such an amazing job to obviously make sure that not only we got one, but two, but three wins. And so I took a risk based on the tremendous and horrendous regulations that was basically looming down upon us. But it was also a calculated risk because of the experience that I had coming into the federal government.
Thank you for highlighting that. Well, last night we had a reception at the ambassador's residence here in Washington, D.C., and the ministry of the president and the ambassador declared that the cigar industry has now surpassed $1 billion product in terms of the export market for one little country in the Caribbean. $1 billion, tens of thousands of jobs. That came out just last night. And when you've got an ambassador to the United States proclaiming what this means to her country on behalf of the minister of the presidency, what it meant to the president of the country, how they have declared it a national heritage product, all this together goes to paint a picture that not all tobacco products are created equal. And now you've heard three major manufacturers, a small business, a mid-sized company, and then a titan of the industry like Carlito Fuente, who's put his heart, soul, and his family's heart and soul into this industry, what it means, so that we can have the simple pleasure of enjoying a cigar in this country. So I hope this session has highlighted what it means to the Dominican Republic, what it means to us as cigar consumers in the United States and our entire supply chain. We've got a representative in the room with us from Georgetown Tobacco, who is a patriarch of this industry. I got to tell a quick story since they're a Dominican product, and it shows, Omar, this relates to you. Actually, I'm gonna have a reminiscing moment since Georgetown Tobacco is in the room with us today. Robbie Levin, the president of Ashton Cigar, comes out of the Dominican Republic, out of Carlito's factory, told me that his very first trade show for Ashton, he walked out with one account. One account, Omar, Ashton, and it was Georgetown Tobacco. And it shows how a company can blossom from the size of you to what an Ashton is today because of the relationship with one retailer in the United States. And I think that highlights what this story is all about. So thank you for having us, and thank you for the panelists for this session.
Thank you, guys. Amazing time.
Thank you, Omar.
Bye, guys.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the International Policy Summit. My name is Ryan Parada. I'm the Senior Manager of Government Affairs and International Policy here at PCA. This next panel is covering global threats and challenges. As cigars take center stage for anti-tobacco regulation, we wanted to highlight some of the efforts made globally. So I'd like to welcome Guy Bentley from the Reason Foundation, Paul Varakis from the ECMA, and Colm O'Shea from House of Horvath and the Small Guy Cigar Group. Would you guys like to join me? So if you guys could just go through really quick, introduce yourselves, tell us about your impact in the industry and some of the advocacy that you've done. Colm, can we start with you?
Happy to join. Nice to see you, Richard, and Ryan, pardon me. So as Ryan pointed out, I'm with House of Horvath, a cigar company out of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. It's a family business. Our family's been involved in the cigar industry since 1932. So we're actually celebrating our 90th year this year. We manufacture, so just behind me, you can see maybe a glass window there. That's our packaging room. There's kind of the same machines that they use down at Newman's facility. We have Renko machines that are cranking out machine-made cigars. We also have the good fortune of being ambassadors to Canada for a lot of world-known brands. American brands, Italian brands, a lot of the Dominican brands, a lot of the Honduran. I guess to be fair, 7 countries we import from. As Ryan also pointed out, we've been advocating on behalf of the cigar industry for over 20 years. It started, you probably know, our first, Canada was the first to put in graphic health warning labels in 2001. So that's when it all began, and that's when the game's begun. Since that time, we're estimating as a family business, we've put out in excess of $1 million in lobbying efforts, and that's just a very conservative number. We initially, as soon as they introduced the health warning labels in Canada in 2001, we decided to make our sort of ad hoc association. We called it the Small Guy Cigar Group. And this little group was a kind of a collection of Havana House was part of it, Scandinavian Tobacco in its original form, which was Imperial Tobacco Canada. And there was another group, which was, I'm trying to think who the other group was, SDG, and Havana House. I guess if I haven't mentioned Havana House. So we kept it to 3 people. And I remember, actually, this is kind of topical because we reached out to Norman Sharp of the CAA 20 odd years ago. And the remark was, his answer was almost very much like Ricky Merfeld. When sort of asked, do you think these regulations will ever come to the United States? And Norman Sharp said, absolutely not. And, we haven't heard anything about warning labels. And if we all turn back the clock to, I think it was 2001, California made the industry put on that sort of California statement on cigar products. So before our graphic health warning labels became legal in Canada, the Californians had already put that message on the pack. So I'll leave it with that, and hopefully the panel will be able to open up. It's just saying that we've had an organization together for 20 years. We're really happy that the handshake between PCA and maybe Canada and maybe Europe is something down the pipe. I think there's a lot of advocacy on a global basis, because I think what governments do, certainly in Canada, is they identify individual companies and they target those. They don't target an industry. We were at least ahead of them by having an association, albeit ad hoc, together so that we could at least get entrance to members of parliament here. And I'll share one last thing, I guess, an anecdotal. We have a magazine called the Maclean's magazine, and it's a Canadian magazine up here in Canada. When we were very, very active lobbying, we would meet this little small association. We met over 68 members of parliament in one session, and we managed to be in the top lobbying groups, top 3 in Canada of all industries. We were ahead of Google, and we were ahead of TransCanada Pipeline. So, I mean, it's amazing what passion, enthusiasm, and desperation can accomplish when your businesses are on the line. So I'll pass it over to the group. Thanks, Ryan, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Cole. Paul, if you could speak a little bit towards your role in the industry and your advocacy.
Sure. Well, thanks very much, Ryan, and everyone at the PCA for having me, here in Washington. ECMA stands for the European Cigar Manufacturer Association. We just actually turned this year 30 years old. A group established and continue to be run by actually mostly family-owned companies. So we represent 18 companies, as again mentioned, and as the previous panel also highlighted. The cigar sector and the European cigar sector is mainly composed of small, medium-sized company, family-owned businesses that have been thriving, over the years. In Europe, cigar manufacturing accounts for 21 plants that directly employ 6,000 people, but also with plants obviously outside Europe. So we're talking about 26 directly employing 40,000 people. And there, of course, what ECMA has done over the years is obviously advocate and defend the rights of European cigar manufacturers and cigar consumers to also continue to be able to enjoy their products. The previous speaker, we've been talking about, of course, health warnings. In Canada, well, Europe, as you may know, is also a powerhouse when it comes to regulation. We had the first, health warnings in 2001 as well. And the advocacy of ECMA has mainly been focusing on educating decision makers about the real specificities of cigar consumption. And I think previous panel, and Ryan, in your role, I know in the PCA, is really trying to demonstrate that, is that they are core facts that are called core facts as well about how our cigars are consumed. How they are consumed, of course, in the US, but in Europe as well, without going through a whole study like the FDA or for the FDA has done, was actually that some facts about the occasional consumptions have been clearly well received by decision makers. So we went through after 2001 for the regulation that was applicable for all tobacco products. We had the 2014, the second Tobacco Products Directive, where the cigar sector with pipe also benefit from some derogation from some of the most stringent regulation. And I would just simply mention 2. One is a labeling exemption. That means that for other tobacco products like cigarette and body-owned tobacco, you have combined health warnings that are 65% on the pack. We managed to get a derogation from that. That is, of course, voluntary for member states, but out of the 27 member states in Europe, 22 applied. That means 22 countries really recognize that our products are different and are also advertised differently. And the second one is also a flavor ban. You guys, I guess, are going to hear about, characterizing flavor ban. We have that for cigarette and mobile tobacco, but got an exemption for cigars. So that's what we've been doing, over the years, and that's what ECMA will continue to do as well.
That's fantastic. You guys do great work over there. Lastly, we have Guy Bentley with the Reason Foundation. Guy, if you could speak towards your advocacy efforts and your role in the tobacco industry.
Yeah, sure. So just to explain a little bit about Reason Foundation. So we're a 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan public policy think tank. So we're not directly associated with any industry or with any political party. But we were originally set up as Reason Magazine in 1968, which is a libertarian free market magazine. Our motto is free minds and free markets, and we've been talking about free trade today and a lot of the importance in that, which is something we advocate very strongly. And then the think tank or research side of the organization came about in the 1970s. And we cover a whole host of policy areas, transportation and pensions and education, all that good stuff. But I specifically focus on consumer freedom. And that includes tobacco and nicotine regulation. And of course, the attacks on the premium cigar industry, both domestically within the United States and increasingly internationally, means that this has to become much more part of our work and our agenda. And we believe that consenting adults, so long as they are not harming others, should be free to do so as they wish. And those who are supplying products, and growing products, and trading products should be regulated and managed commensurate with whatever risks are involved with the product, which from a behavioral standpoint for premium cigars is very, very low, as has been discussed through patterns of use and demographic of the consumer. So we see a lot of our role is in increasing the amount of attention we give to this sector, both because of the regulatory attacks it's under, but also the importance it is to consumers, to the economy, to international relations, to foreign trade, and so on. It's a very important part of many countries' economies, as we've been hearing today. So I think, in our role as a think tank, it's to conduct research, but also to engage with and inform and educate legislators. We do not advocate for or against specific bills and legislation, but we seek to educate legislators and the media and the general public about the issues and why they should embrace an attitude of freedom and tolerance rather than that of prohibition. So that's a bit of background of Reason and what we're doing at the moment, and hopefully we'll be engaging a lot more next year on the cigar issue, because I don't think there's any shortage of issues coming up for the premium cigar industry.
Absolutely. Thank you, Guy. So the United States, Canada, and Europe are the biggest cigar markets in the world. With more and more regulation coming down, mostly in Canada and Europe, although we've been seeing our fair share of fights here in the United States. Let's talk a little bit about imports into Europe and into Canada, and how the regulation has been affecting them. Where do you see the industry going if the regulation continues in the direction that it goes in without a good fight? Paul?
Sure, I can start with that. Yeah, obviously, it won't come as a surprise that a lot, and mostly, let's say, probably 96% of, premium handmade cigars consumed in Europe are imported. I think that's, a clear fact. We of course have domestic production, in Madeira and in Italy, but compared to the massive volumes being imported, import is obviously the main driver for the supply chain of premium handmade cigars consumed in Europe. Few words, obviously, about Europe. Probably the structure of what is Europe. In a sense, the European Union is obviously could be compared somehow as a federal, zone, just like the US, with obviously, different member state regulation. So the main trade barriers so far for import has been the fact that we are a market with 24 languages. And so the health warnings that I mentioned are not health warnings in purely English, right? That means if you want to import cigars and you want to place them on different markets, you need to be able to have an importer or a distributor that is able to actually comply with the local regulation. So even if the message, the wording, the label is agreed at the EU level, it will have to be translated in 24 languages. That's just one thing. Second, the size. I mentioned we have derogation in 22 countries, but that means that's not the case in the rest. It's in 5 countries. So that means you also have different, size, shape of labeling. We have plain packaging that have been popping up as well, imported from Australia, New Zealand, started in Ireland, now in Finland. That is also applying for all tobacco products, including cigars. We hear, of course, some, warning sign from, other countries in Europe. So far, we've been also able to push back against those for plain packaging. I'm talking in big countries like France, like in the UK, where again, we were able to demonstrate the specific pattern of consumption and also the profile of consumers that is different, so hence a different regulation. So product regulation is one big, barriers to trade that will, and sorry to be one of the gloomy guys here, only get worse. Obviously we have, plenty of things in the pipeline. We have a revision of the tobacco products, directive coming along the line in 2024, 2025. But as well, the second biggest thing that Europe has been driving and taking example, from other countries is track and trace. And for those who don't know what is track and trace, it's going to be a massive hurdle for the cigar industry. Track and trace was primarily designed for, as its name suggests, to track and trace every possible, box of cigarettes, namely because of the illicit trade of cigarettes that you have at the borders of Europe. And that's that makes sense, right? When you have a massive amount of illicit trade. For cigars, we don't have that. We don't have that big amount of illicit trade. It's very insignificant. Also because it's too expensive to produce to make it something that is actually illicitly made. And so track and trace will now apply in 2024 to all tobacco products, including cigars. And comes two things. One, again, to make things complicated, we don't have one EU code we need to place on your box of cigars, right? You have 27 different codes. So you need to know when you import into Europe, to which market you want to import there. Fortunately, we have a derogation there as well for cigars, for imported products, that you don't need to put a code on the product up until it leaves the bonded warehouse. So that's one thing that is a bit, let's say, stress-free, is of course you can continue to import, but that means it's going to be a massive burden on your importer to make sure it complies with the different regulation there. That has obviously a cost. That at the moment, the cost was again designed for mass consumption product like cigarettes, easy to produce, quick to produce, and cheap to produce. That's not the case for us. So the big issue is that the one-size-fits-all regulation doesn't work, for us, because of volumes of production for mixed cigars that doesn't make it possible to have economy of scale, right, for that kind of regulation. So those are the two things that could continue and be, really worrisome and make you, scared. And of course, if we have more time in the panel, I can talk about restriction on smoke-free environment, much more on consumptions. But on import, I'll leave to that.
Thank you. Colm, if you could speak a little bit towards Canadian imports and the restriction on sales and how you see that panning out long term if we don't step in and fight some of this policy.
Well, I'll just tell you what my yesterday was. I was on a call with the Small Guys Cigar Group with Health Canada. Just before the pandemic came in, we announced plain packaging, which was an enormous concern for premium cigars. Not so much our mass market. We represent, and some of the distributors here represent some of the big brands that are mass produced. Mass producing packaging with requirements is easy. Putting stickers on boxes in the Dominican Republic in a small factory is quite a different thing, especially when, so we're not, just to let you know, with plain packaging, we transitioned because of the COVID pandemic. Plain packaging was a requirement for premium cigars, but all of the cardboard manufacturers had redirected their production towards medical packaging. So there's nobody who wanted to talk about new packaging. So we decided as a company, and it turned out the industry in Canada, we went right to bundled cigars. So any brand that you know, and we represent a lot of beautiful houses out of Honduras, Nicaragua, and Dominican. We have to convince them that our transitionary pack is going to be bundled. So a marquee brand is now going to be in a bundle in Canada, a cellophane bundle. And so now going to today, so that was only 2019 they introduced this. 2022 it was effective, and on 2022 the summer, Health Canada said we're going to change the warning labels now. And we had already spoken to them to bring them both ideas together because they require packaging changes. We can only do it once. We're not the manufacturer. We depend on, in my case, I believe it's 13 manufacturers for our products. To Paul's point, the MOQs for packaging are quite high if you're into, to do a conversion, or becomes the other option is cellophane bundles. So we were just on a call with them yesterday, and I have to admit, surprise to us, we made our submissions on health warning labels, and we said these changes are beyond the abilities of the industry. They're planning on going 75% of all packaging. We told them that this one size fits all, Paul, your words, which are used often by us, it's wonderful for a cigarette pack that has two standard size, king size and a regular, and it is standardized because of plain packaging, which they're now into a slide and shell only. So they'll be going to pretty much a one size format. All the health warning labels are designed for a landscape. Cigarillos come in 5-packs, which are portrait, so it doesn't really fit. So we submitted these problems to Health Canada. We requested a dialogue, which they gave to us yesterday, and I'm happy to report. I mean, I feel pretty positive after yesterday's meeting. They realized that a distinction should be made between large cigars. It's the first time I've ever heard our government talk that way. And I should actually give a shout out to the PCA team. I believe it was Glenn had fired up the information, which I reused in our submission to Health Canada, showing how there's a difference between premium cigars and other cigars. So I think that may have been what gave us a second look. And so now we have an opportunity to spike the ball and make a distinction between the handmade, hand-packed goods. But this is early. This is early discussions. I don't think we've won the fight, but certainly that's the way we've approached it. And like Europe and countries, as I started the story with government regulations, it's a 20-year battle. And I think all of us look at the victories in terms of not even, I was going to say feet, probably inches on a 100-yard field. We managed with plain packaging to, for verification and authenticity, to allow us to have the cigar ring underneath the plain packaging band. This is it's seriously important, given that I told you we all went to cellophane. So when a person in a country that has an FET of 88% buys a cigar at retail, in Florida he might pay, say, $8 to $10. In Canada, he'll be paying between $26 and $40 for a similar cigar. And when you're making a commercial exchange of $40, you really want to know that the product underneath there is indeed what it was intended to be. So being able to get the government to allow us to keep the original band was, in our case, a major victory, because otherwise the integrity of the whole cigar industry in Canada would be undermined. So I guess what I could say in terms of efforts, whatever countries that are viewing with us today, is if you don't have an association in your country, and even though they're your competitors, but they're not your competitors when the boat's sinking, and you don't really look to see who's your friend and your ally, your enemy. You just ask if you can help row the boat or bail some water in. We are friendly with our competitors because we have to be, they're always good guys, and I'm sure that's the case. Associate, advocate, spend some money, because if you don't get in front of the members of parliament or your government officials, you are, an incidental part of the regulation to them. So I think that's the only advice I would give is to be active. Group up as many times where you can. And then what is famous, of course, Ryan, is the information that the government has turned over on our behalf, showing incidence rates are low, addictive rates are non-existent. Those kind of things go very far. So, I'll leave it at that, and hopefully another question will provoke something else, because I could go on forever. It's been 20 years of lobbying, so.
But it's very helpful commentary. I appreciate that. Moving more towards consumer freedom in the industry. So we've been seeing generational smoking bans being introduced across the world, from New Zealand to Malaysia, Hong Kong, the EU, the African Union very recently. Guy, you recently testified in New Zealand. Could you speak a little bit towards the New Zealand law and maybe explain it to our viewers a little bit, and then your testimony?
Yeah, for sure, Ryan. I collaborated with a colleague in New Zealand from an organization called the New Zealand Initiative. And we wrote a submission to the New Zealand Health Select Committee and presented oral testimony, and as did Ryan as well. Essentially talking about, this is legislation for a smoke-free New Zealand by 2025. And this has a number of planks to it, but I think the most concerning, specifically relating to cigars, are, as Ryan says, the generational smoking ban, so that from anybody born on or after January 1st, 2009, would not ever be allowed to buy a tobacco product. The second part is also retail restrictions, which I'll come on to as well. And the bill really is one of the most draconian we've seen in the world. For instance, there's a penalty of up to $50,000 for supplying an ineligible person with a smoked tobacco product. So informal social supply, including family, is included if the product is provided in a public space. So for instance, if you take, for example, if in 2039, say, a man born in 2008 provides his sister with a cigar, and she was born in 2010, she's aged 29, say if he hands her a cigar at a beach, say, he would be liable for up to $50,000 fine. I think the New Zealand Council on Civil Liberties, quite rightly to my view, said that the bill was incompatible with a free and democratic society. I think we very much take that view as well. And we haven't seen this kind of law implemented at scale yet on a national level. We have, however, seen national examples of similar kinds of tobacco prohibition. For instance, famously, the Kingdom of Bhutan banned all tobacco sales in 2004, saying that this was going to be a great boon to public health, it was going to be good for the economy. It was a complete disaster. There was a huge boom in the illicit trade. There was not even really change in smoking rates. In fact, some years smoking rates increased, particularly amongst youth. And also that the government finally decided to abandon that prohibition in 2020, when it finally realized that the law was such a disaster. We saw in South Africa at the height of the pandemic, the country banned all tobacco sales. A study was conducted of that in 2022, finding that, quote, the ban inadvertently benefited manufacturers who were previously disproportionately involved in illicit activities. These manufacturers increased their market share even after the ban was lifted. So even just a temporary disruption of these kinds of prohibitions can permanently affect the environment. Moving on to retail restrictions, this is another quite extreme part of the New Zealand tobacco control plan, which is to limit the number of retailers of tobacco products by about 95%. This is an idea that has gained traction in the tobacco control community. It's being proposed several places in the world. And particularly when we're talking about cigars, if we talk about cigar retailers and specialist shops, who are really sort of the heart and soul of a lot of the front-facing part of the industry that's facing the consumers. The country that currently comes closest to having a restriction like this is Hungary. when in 2013 they passed a law saying that they cut the number of retail outlets by about 83%. This has not had a massive effect on smoking behaviors. However, it has provided opportunity, for instance, for corruption, because those who are going to get the licenses, it's no surprise that those who did get licenses were friends of the Fidesz ruling party. And also, this is bad for consumers. You are essentially granting monopolies to specific people who do get the license, which increases prices for the consumer. It acts as a wealth transfer from consumers and other retailers to those who are granted these licenses, and doesn't, in essence, do anything to affect state public health. But, you know, if this was behavior in the private sector of retailers colluding to exclude other retailers and limit competition, that would be anti-competitive and illegal. But now it's being done by the public sector, that's being made law. So a lot of very negative consequences in New Zealand that hopefully won't spread from there, or even will be revised in New Zealand legislation. But I could go on as well, but I will leave it there for others to comment.
Yeah, playing off of the spreading aspect of that, we've seen the European Commission look into the smoke-free initiative. Paul, would you like to speak a little bit towards that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you know, when we look at the smoke-free, you know, exactly, you know, the wording of the Commission is a bit different because it's, you know, it's a tobacco-free as well society, and it has a consequence not for necessarily cigars, but much more for new products that do contain tobacco. So there's something there. The only thing that I, you know, always say about this tobacco-free society is that as ECMA, we welcome it. You know, we welcome it for a simple reason. The goal is to have, you know, less than 5% of the population that consume tobacco product on a daily basis. Well, you know, premium cigars are not consumed on a daily basis. So, you know, there is space, you know, for us, you know, obviously to exist in a tobacco-free society. And I think that's the role of association like us, you know, and like the PCA and others to make that point, you know, that we have to make a distinction, you know, obviously of what that kind of, you know, ban entails. And I'm not talking about, of course, there's generational ban, you know, that's a completely different story. But, you know, the EU has adopted this, you know, let's say 2 years ago as an objective. This exists and is translated as well at the national level. That would exist, you know, in France, in the UK, etc. Give or take, you know, the difference is really about, you know, how they target this, right? You know, and how do they translate that 5%? Is it 5% of people smoking or 5% of people smoking on a regular basis, etc.? And that we've seen different, you know, orientation. In Finland, for example, they talk about a nicotine-free society. Again, thinking that, you know, they want also all new products to be included into that goal. Now, that objective, as I said, is to be different from the generational ban that so far the EU has not put forward simply because they don't have the competence to do that, fortunately. Denmark, you know, was mentioning it, but was rebuffed by Parliament, you know, saying, well, you can't do that for the exact same reasons that this goes against being part of a free democratic society. But we know that other countries, you know, I've also mentioned it, the reviews of the CAN report in the UK, for example, has mentioned that as a possibility. So far, nothing to be seen, but like, you know, other countries, Australia and New Zealand, UK is always on the radar for the next, you know, generation of ideas, just like Ireland. So we're just wait and see, because that might happen, you know, next month.
Yeah, it's a daunting thought, right? That Europe is paying attention to the world stage.
Indeed.
Yeah, sticking with the world stage, with the generational smoking ban starting to take hold in places like New Zealand, Guy, what do you believe is on the horizon with either the next, you know, attack on consumer freedoms or the next generational smoking ban to be introduced?
Yeah, I think it's a really important issue. Obviously, there's the practices for which we're familiar, such as retail restrictions, graphic warnings, health warnings, and these generational bans. You could try and see people who have work in tobacco control who know very little about premium cigars, for instance, try and put forward some sort of product standard proposal for a denicotinized cigar, which, as you know, is impossible for purely leaf tobacco unless you age your cigars very beautifully, you know, long time, but it's essentially impossible. But I would not be surprised if somebody in public health advocated that as a possibility. I would say what is particularly important to recognize is that all these proposals coming up in the EU and other markets, they're happening at the same time. A lot of the same people are supporting them, a lot of the same academics and so on, and that this is not random, this is not accidental. And a lot of this is, not entirely, but to a large extent, the responsibility of one man who is an American billionaire, former mayor of New York, and former presidential candidate, which is Michael Bloomberg, who funds to a vast extent a network through philanthropic organizations pushing tobacco control, both in highly developed countries and low and middle income countries. And some of that, so basically philanthropic imperialism is that particularly targeting low and middle income countries, health departments and other regulatory agencies will be offered large grants by Bloomberg Philanthropies or one of its arms, such as Vital Strategies, for public health and tobacco control projects. But then those grants will also be expected to be in return for very strict tobacco control legislation. And that there has been quite a few scandals on this. For instance, in the Philippines, this was seen as interference in domestic affairs, which I think it was. This sparked a backlash. In Mexico, a Bloomberg-funded group was found to have actually been the originator of writing legislation for the parliament, which is entirely inappropriate. We also see supranationally, on the World Health Organization level, through Mr. Bloomberg has donated significant sums of money. No coincidence that he was reappointed as ambassador for non-communicable diseases and has worked with the Gates Foundation, the World Bank on technical implementation of tobacco control measures. So I think it's important for people in the cigar industry because people in other industries are aware of this influence of sort of very, philanthropic organizations that create what look like a chorus, a grassroots call for regulation when it is nothing of the sort. This is a highly coordinated effort by a very small group of individuals. And I think that, both the industry and also supplier countries, such as the Dominican Republic and Honduras, should be given as much a seat at the table when discussing these regulatory issues as a single billionaire who has made this his hobby horse.
Yeah, absolutely. We're very familiar with the efforts of groups such as that in the U.S. As well as on the international stage. Looking at the international stage and kind of the start of those regulations in those anti-tobacco packages, we see a ton of taxes being put on tobacco products. We see warning labels, graphic warning labels, and plain packaging. Colm, if you could speak towards the potential of rolling back some of these anti-tobacco efforts. What do you believe is the best course of action, and what do you believe we should be tackling first?
Yeah, I wish I had more victories to report. The effort, the health group, and I'm glad to hear the background guy. I didn't quite know why they all seem to surface at the same time. It's shocking to little companies like ourselves, of course, that they do, because it catches you off guard. Rolling back, we had one success story. We have provincial tax, which is just like a state tax, I guess, within the United States, and they moved the provincial tax to 229% of the product's value, and we got on it. It happened in Alberta, which is our kind of western province, oil men, tar sands, the whole thing. And we had a great premier at the time. We lobbied there, and within the same day that we lobbied, because there's only 74 members of the Legislative Assembly, we got to probably, 20 or more in that day. They rolled it back to, I believe it was 129. So from 229 to 129. Again, it wasn't all the way back to 67%, but we did get a tax rollback. And that might be in the annals of never before happened when the finance group decides to roll back taxes. So I mean, you can do it. We're actually at play right now, Ryan, and I'm thankful that the group had passed on that information. We've got a critical moment now where the regulations are so complicated, overly complicated for a primitive industry, hand cigars, and that actually is our message to them is that it's it's meant for a homogeneous tobacco market, which is cigarettes. It's not for a heterogeneous market like cigars. It's made for automated packaging versus hand assisted or hand packed. And as I said, we just for the first time heard them. They actually asked us, and I offered the ECMA, or the European Union's definition on a cigar, what a cigar is, I guess a larger cigar. And I believe it is 2.3 grams is the number that was used. We asked our partners, Cortez, to give us that number just the last month. And they sort of said, what would distinguish a cigar as being large or unique, or what you're describing here as a troublemaker? And they thought price was the issue. And in Canada, I just shared with you, our excise tax is 88%. Every cigar is expensive. We normally 25 years ago, or say 10 or 15, would have said, well, $3 to $5 is called, if it's over that, it's expensive. That number's now moved. Our sweet spot in the market as a distributor is we want to have a $20 retail, which is, almost, it may be England's pricing for cigars, because I think they do it by weight. And but the ad valorem pushes all the cigars up pretty quickly. So I think we do have an opportunity, and we're using your material. And it may be a pivotal moment, because the government's already got us in this plain packaging model. We're asking them to insert a new definition to be not more favorable, but remove the burden from the segment of the market that is most challenging, which is premium handmade products. So, I'm always an eternal optimist, because if you don't, and you're in the cigar industry, you might as well give the keys to the government, which, by the way, I should say, when you get kicked enough on the ground, it's hard to get up again, but we always try to get up. And I think what really gets us going is we think of the consumer, the guy who I'm sort of servicing right now with a cigar from Nicaragua, deserves that cigar. And that's more to your libertarian side. He's old enough to make his own choice. He wants that cigar. In Canada, one of the reasons why we might have an opportunity to get this through, we met with a minister from the Liberal Party, which is the government in power right now, and he visited Havana House. And he said, so if it's challenging for you to put these warning labels and changing the packaging, I know what's going to happen. And we said, well, what's going to happen? He said, well, that'll go to the illicit market. And when you're sitting next to the biggest importer of cigar products on the 42nd parallel, your products are already in the American products, no taxes, no warning labels, no flavor bans, are in Canada right now, because they just have to travel over an invisible border. They can be shipped up by the online sales. They're clever people. They send it to PO boxes in Buffalo to us, and then they just carry it over. So when they mention that, and of course I've ignored the obvious, we have Indian reserves that cross both sides of the border, pretty much right across the country. So the reserves they're our second biggest competitors. Our first biggest competitor is the government. So I think the government, if we get the message that, and this is the way we have to look at it, it's the loss of taxation, the loss of communicating that health message. Not complicated, we hope. That's what we hope for cigars. That product will still get the Canadian consumer through an illicit channel, and that governments don't like. So I think that even in Europe's sort of patchwork of a community, if you have one weak link, if it's Germany decides not to sign on and the rest of the market does, Germany will be the major interstate seller of products, because people will drive over, hike over a border, and get their products brought back. So I think we might have a win on if we can insert a definition. I think that's the hardest part. And if I could ask your team to maybe give that some thought, how we can insert a definition, because I've read the definitions that have been circulated. I don't know necessarily if we want to go against a machine-made Corona versus premium, and maybe we'll have to sacrifice that because the handmade market is if it was done by weight, I'd say a 6 gram would be about a Corona weight, machine made, and above should be considered large and maybe not have to comply with the regulations talking about plain packaging or health warning. Or is it price? Is it value? That's what I think. So we're pretty close to determining whether or not we can affect change. And I think the latest round of complications of the new health warning label are bringing us faster to that opportunity, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitions are an important fight everywhere in the world when it comes to premium cigars. Question for the group. We've been working to organize internationally, and I just want some of you guys to speak a little bit towards the importance of organization when it comes to facing against some of these terrible government regulations, and how we might be able to organize a little bit better when it comes to the distributors, the suppliers, the manufacturers, retailers, and consumers. Paul, Colin?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, one of the first thing, I would say that is very important, and that, obviously, I think we all do great, country, is that we monitor you and we disseminate the information. But I think that that's really important for everyone around the globe to know what's happening. That's the first thing, because when you know what's happening, what's happening in Canada, for example, right now, you can pick up the phone and, ask me exactly. You got, feedback from G. Cortez, from the Madero cigar family about, how we interpret certain things back in Europe, but vice versa. And we know that regulation is coming one way or another. We know that in some countries and in some regions in the world, we are, it's a bit weird to say more advanced. That's maybe negative actually to say that, more advanced in Europe, we have more regulation. So that if your government, doesn't matter where in the world, wants to go further, there's always a place that went further. So maybe you can ask an association, a contact point there, how they've done it, what worked, because maybe even if the proposal and the legislation is bad there, it could have been worse. So what did they manage to fight back against? And then obviously that's probably a small pessimistic message. There are some regulations that are coming, whether we like it or not, right? And it's also a cost-benefit exercise into what kind of regulation you want or you could survive with, and I think that's important as well. But obviously, coordination goes simply for that kind of meeting that we have today. Also listening to what's happening around the globe. Now, you can definitely expect an email from me definitely in your mailbox today about what's happening in Canada, and just happy to take over the conversation, next week on a virtual call or by email, just to see how we can really organize things so that there is a common definition or common understanding of the problem. And I think that's already a big success. I don't think there is a need for an international coordinating body, etc. But what I do believe is that we need to talk to each other, and I think that's also the strength of the cigar industry. I worked before in other part of the tobacco industry, and something that I really fell in love working at ECMA is that I have a board that is composed of CEOs that are passionate, really passionate about what they do. cigar is a product that doesn't shy away from what it is. It's a tobacco product. It's a tobacco product inside, outside. And the people that are there, they're passionate. So if we just connect these passionate people, we'll be able, I think, to fight back, to use this passion into advocacy and advocacy into education to make sure that decision makers understand that we're different from other tobacco products.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Colm, if you would like to speak towards kind of our organization efforts in Canada and the importance moving forward.
Yeah, I love the idea, and I may have shared this with you before, Ryan. We do a pretty good job of organizing the manufacturers and importers. So we know them. I know them by name. I work with them as well. We sell to our wonderful friends and customers, our tobacconists. There's an element that we don't have access to, and that is actually to their consumer. And they've all got their emails and they've got their social media. And when you have an association, which is not a distributor of cigar products in, taking a position or a space in the Canadian market, there's an opportunity there for you to maybe work with our tobacconists and have them give you their social media accounts on a sort of a confidentiality base, so you're not going to share it with me, because I guess everybody's fear is that I'm going to go direct to consumer and sell and promote my product to their consumers. But for advocacy, having a third party association and actually an international a group, I think would give there'd be more willingness for our retailers to share their 150 or 200 email accounts or emails. And if we could use I think you mentioned a mailing system that you have where if we draft the letter that wants to go to the member of parliament or the provincial government official, you'd have, the cigar consumer is from coast to coast for us in North and South. And, when they start getting 125 letters from their riding constituents, I believe the number is something like 25 is they must respond and act. So if you get beyond that number, you really have the ear of the constituent. And these normally, so I guess the missing link is retail, I think, in this journey. I think the sharing of the associations and manufacturers and countries at our level is really softening the beachhead with regulations coming like this. What did you do and what did I do? But on the advocacy to help us is to turn it from the small guy cigar group to the Premium Cigar Group of Canada, which it represents, I think let's say 100,000 or 200,000 Canadians. That I think is something that linking up or with the PCA or the CRA or a group that says we'll look after the consumer and their liberties, because that's a libertarian position. Ours is a commercial. The burden is too hard and you're going to put me out of business. And we forget all about the fact that there's a liberty here at stake. We're just trying to make sure we keep 50 people hired. So that's where I can see the association working. I mean, I wanted to add something as well. Paul had kind of mentioned that, I mean, there's a lot of maybe interest in adopting clean packaging down the road in Europe. And I think that is a seriously important matter to consider, because as our country legalized, we had plain packaging come in simultaneous or instantaneous with the legalization of marijuana, because it becomes a controlled product. So the government felt that if we're having a controlled product and we're going to put it in plain packaging, well, why don't we start adding to the controlled product basket? And I'm sure that's what's going to happen to alcohol. That might happen to sugary foods. They'll just say, "Oh, we have something for that. It's called plain packaging." Now, where I think we can, I love it if Europe and the world sped up and had plain packaging, and I'm sorry to say that, because it would make the importation of products much easier, because if we all had a universal pack, the brand itself does sell. It's just for us in small countries, bringing it from the Dominican to Canada is a difficult process. I don't wish that upon you. I'm just telling you that if a country's considering legalizing marijuana, you are months, if not weeks, away from potentially having plain packaging on other perceived controlled products, unless the good work of the PCA and the ECMA group keep that distinction for premium cigars. So yeah, there's a lot of synergies having an association to grab information at the consumer level, and I believe there's certainly a lot of benefits in sharing positions and strategies that work and strategies that fail. But I embrace it up here, and I speak on behalf of the Small Guy Cigar Group's members. They think it's a smart move. So continue your efforts and continue thinking about us as participants in your goal.
Thank you so much. And I just want to thank all of our panelists for joining us today and speaking on this very, very important topic. We're all lovers of great cigars, and it's important that we all work to protect it. So thank you guys. We're now going to move to a short break. We'll be back with Reinhard speaking towards the environmental impacts of the cigar industry. We'll be back at around 3:30. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
and take that off. Yeah. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Premium Cigar Association International Policy Summit. I just wanted to thank everybody for viewing at home and for everybody here at our townhouse. Next up, we have a panel, a star-studded panel presented by Reinhard Kroerig, the Vice President of Mirafel Cigar, an avid cigar communicator trying to make a meaningful contribution to the premium cigar world through his passionate efforts, such as through Light 'em Up Lounge, which he founded and hosts, as well as the Cigar Rights of the World. Reinhard, welcome.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon to all of you. Thank you very much for having me today. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be part of this delightful international summit, such an important cause. People from all around the world logging on, joining today, whether it's in person or joining us virtually on the multiple live streams. It's, again, a true pleasure and a privilege to be here together with all of you. And I'm delighted to be hosting and moderating this panel this afternoon together with a tremendous panel of industry icons, industry professionals, and we will introduce them in a second. But I think the topic that we want to discuss today of tobacco farming and the future and how the industry serves as stewards of the land is such an incredibly valuable and important one, because it reminds us of the importance of the humble cigar that brings us all together, but what's behind it. And a cigar, as I tend to say, is never just a cigar. It is something that brings us all together, that connects us, that reminds us of values that are so critically important, especially in today's day and age, of time, appreciation, of the values that we share. But in essence, and that's what we want to discuss on this panel, also about how the tobacco farming and growing operations serve a greater purpose and how they make a tremendous impact on the people, the land. And we need to preserve, we need to protect that, and we need to nurture that delicate plant and bring it into the future in order to make handmade premium cigars, the very best tobaccos in the world, even more relevant, and take century-old knowledge, tradition and heritage that has been passed on from generation to generation, and combine it with modern techniques, with innovation and thoughtful processes for a sustainable future. And in order to discuss that, I am delighted to welcome our panel and welcome the industry icons that will be here together with us. So it is my pleasure and privilege to introduce to all of you Nestor Andrés Plasencia.
Hello, how are you guys? Reinhard,
we have
nice
with us
friend.
Nestor, thank you so much for joining our panel today.
It's a pleasure.
Next up,
invitation.
Antonio Gomez from La Flor Dominicana. Tony, thank you so much for accepting our humble invitation and joining us today.
My pleasure, my friend, and honestly, I'm very humbled to even be here with these guys right now. I feel out of place, you know.
We have Jeremiah Marapfel, Chairman and President of the Marapfel Companies. Good evening, Jeremiah, and thank you very much for joining us. Jeremiah, I cannot hear you. I don't know if it's just on my end, but maybe it's the earphones, or you just check your microphone for a second. I believe now you're here.
How's this?
Much better.
Forward to this, Reinhard, very much for having us.
A pleasure and privilege. And finally, the last gentleman on our panel today, Philip Wynn from Felipe Gregorio Cigars. Thank you very much for joining us, Philip.
Good evening. It's an honor and a pleasure to be with such great people of our industry. And thank you for hosting this event, Vanguard.
The title of today's panel is an inspiring one. And as I said in my brief introduction, it reminds us of what's so very special and critical about this beloved industry. You all here on this panel have brought tremendous value to the tobacco and cigar culture, but you have also brought tremendous value, and you continue to do so on a daily basis, to the countries that you're operating in, the communities, the people who every single day give their heart and soul to grow the finest tobacco, to manufacture wonderful cigars that bring pleasure to people all around the world. And that is a tremendous responsibility and a daily challenge. And all of you in various countries all around the world, all of you are facing tremendous challenges today. And I would like to discuss that briefly with you and get an understanding and share with all of the people joining us today what this responsibility means to you and what those daily challenges that you're facing, why it's so important for you to still try and overcome that and give it your all every single day. Nestor.
First, thank you again for the invitation. Reinhard, it's an honor and a pleasure to be here today with this amazing gentleman and to talk to all the viewers about what is passionate, what my passion is, you know, that is tobacco growing, and what everything involves when you see it as an holistic approach. That is not just the tobacco, is the soil, is the microclimate, is the people around it, are the people that you are serving, are the consumers, are the people around the fields, are the pre-industries. It's an holistic approach that you can see all the hard work that all of us are doing and the people that are working with us in our teams to being able to produce amazing products for you guys to enjoy. So that is something that I'm very passionate, very humble, and very blessed. First, to being born in the family that I was born and to work in this industry that I love. And there's a lot of struggles, you know, there's a lot of lack of people right now in Nicaragua. You see weather changes and everything. But when you have a bigger meaning, when your goal is bigger than that, all the other things you see as a very small things. So that is what drives me. That is we have some daycare centers also that for the son of the workers, daughters of the workers. When I see those kids' faces, you know, when I see their future, that depends a lot in our work. That is, all the struggles are little compared to the things that we can achieve. So that is something that wake me up every morning, that drives me to do the best that we can. And I'm sure all the gentlemen that I'm here, I know their products, I know how they work. So it's something that is very, very strong in the cigar community. So it's really a pleasure to work and to serve, you know, and to give the people the best experience that they can, and at the same time improving the lives that the people that are in the fields and the pre-industries and the factories and the communities around it. That's no better feeling than that.
Philip, you have served the tobacco and cigar industry for decades, long before the first boom in the late 90s has happened. And you have seen the industry change throughout those years and decades. Obviously, today we want to talk about the tobacco farming, how things have changed and how we can preserve tradition and history, but also make it relevant for the future and generations to come. What are some of the critical things that you have seen over those past decades? And how do you feel that the tradition and the history and the heritage can be successfully merged with innovation and with modern techniques for the future to perpetuate this century-old craft and artisanship and make it relevant for today's and tomorrow's consumer?
Again, thank you to mimic the words of Nestor. Thank you for having us. Thank you that there is such an interest. I think one has to just look at this panel. Apart from myself, we have three gentlemen that come from families of tobacco, and that they have brought with them all the knowledge that their father has given them, and they are adapting to the modern world with what they think is the better way to produce and to manage what is a micro industry in a global world. I remember meeting Nestor's father, Nestor Sr., in 1988, and back then I was already impressed by his knowledge and what he knew. I think most people forget, and most people would love to learn what he has forgotten. And I know how he insisted on his son. I believe, Nestor, you went to Zamorano, no, to study, at,
Yes. Yeah.
which is one of the prestige universities in Central America, to study agriculture. And the same goes with Anthony or Antonio. I met your father years ago, and I know the passion that he gives to our industry. And it's so nice to see you there following his footsteps. Jeremiah, I've read a lot about you, about your father, and I've read all the trials and tribulations that you have witnessed in Africa, which is a completely different world compared to the world that we're used to. And you have a lot more problems and a lot more challenges, I believe, that we have in Central and in South America. So all of these items show that our industry is working hand in hand with the problems we have in the world today. Immigration in the United States, immigration in Europe are fundamental problems that our politicians are facing with. And there are people that are leaving their lands because of lack of sustainability to come and try and find a better life in an industrialized world. The answer to that are people like the people on this panel, because by producing jobs, by creating an environment, these people don't want to leave. They don't want to leave their homes. They don't want to go up north or cross the Mediterranean. They love their land, but due to political reasons, due to deforestation, due to drug cartels, due to destabilization, they're forced to leave. But all of us create a safe mecca for their families to work in. And that is crucial. That is crucial in maintaining a viable society and to keep the values that these people have in their community. Now, how can we better, Reinhard, you answered? Well, we can better by innovation. And we have a lot of tools on our hands now that we didn't have before. We have geometrics, we have global satellites, we have knowledge of using water, we have better irrigation systems, we have we're more aware of organic methods in doing crops, we're more aware of the world of the bees in germinating our tobacco fields. So much more is brought to the table because we have so much more wealth of information. So that's another way that we can go ahead. I can't hear you, Reinhard.
We don't hear you, Reinhard.
Philip, many thanks for these points that you made and the very important aspects that you raised. Jeremiah, just a few days ago, you stood in front of hundreds and hundreds of enthusiastic cigar aficionados at the Big Smoke. And you spoke with the passion in your heart and in your eyes about the challenging and, in most cases, downright adverse conditions under which your family has been growing tobacco for generations. And you have truly transformed people's lives and the tobacco industry with those operations in Cameroon. How does it feel? What do you have in your heart when you think about the people that you work with there, and what you have provided those people with, the opportunities that you have given them? And how do you feel about the responsibility to continue a legacy and to make sure that those people can put food on the table, can provide for their families, and can continue to produce something that brings tremendous joy and pleasure to so many people all around the world?
It's a loaded question, Reinhard. I think I feel the same as what Nestor or Philip or Tony feels, or anybody else in this industry. I think we all have many things in common, but one in particular, and that's the love for people and the love to sublime and gratify what nature has to offer us. Anybody working in the tobacco industry lives roller coasters at some point in their life. It's an industry which is tough. It has good days, it has bad days. And anybody who touches to notions of nature or notions of handmade products in the form and the art which is being conducted in our particular industry is playing with fire, metaphorically speaking, and in reality as well. But all of that is fueled, as you say, by several different pillars. The first one, which Nestor knows very well, is responsibility towards your ancestors. When you have legacy of people who have been working a certain way for generation upon generation upon generation, you don't want to be the one that falls flat-faced on the soil and fuck it all up, excuse my French. And I can see Nestor smiling there because we're of the same generation. And I think both of us grew up with very, very, very big shoes to fill. And even though we're never going to fill them, we're trying our best to walk the walk.
100%.
The second pillar is the love for the communities who we work for, with, who we embrace to be able to do all of this. Now, one may look at this from the outside and think, oh, these guys work with a lot of people. They have a lot of employees in their companies. They have a lot of people serving them. But the reality is it's the other way around. And I think everybody on this panel is going to grin that it's in many times it's us serving the people we love and the people we work with. Because at the end of the day, every single one of them becomes family one way or another. We care about every single one of them. I have a little anecdote, actually. I was on the phone more or less for the past 24 hours with a gentleman who works with us in Cameroon. He's in the bush right now. He was rushed to the, I wouldn't call it the hospital. I would say a bush clinic or a doctor, whatever you want to call it, because of some form of, we don't really know whether it's malnutrition or whether it's some kind of parasite or something that attacked him. His heartbeat became irregular. He's a 40-year-old. He's a young man. And I was up all night on my phone, doctors around me, trying to figure out how to liaison and how to tend for this gentleman. And if he's listening, Dilip, I know you're doing better because we spoke an hour ago, but this one's for you. And that just shows that the whole operation becomes, I'm not going to use the word family because it might sound cliche, but it is. these are people that we deeply, 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 deeply care for, and we're deeply concerned for, because at the end of the day, the leaf of tobacco which everybody's enjoying has nothing to do with Nestor or me or Tony or Philip. It has to do with the hundreds of thousands of people around the world that are getting their hands dirty, that are risking their lives because they actually like this industry very much and they want to be a part of it, and not because it's easy, I can guarantee you. And that's the second pillar. And then the third pillar, obviously, are the consumers. And yes, I was at the Big Smoke a few days ago. I flew out from Europe, traveled 24 hours to get to Vegas, stayed for 48, traveled another 24 back. And when you see the smile on people's faces enjoying these products, it makes it all worthwhile. And I think we're proud. We're very, very proud. And all the people with us should be very, very proud, because we're accomplishing a very specific mission. And that mission is bringing enjoyment and bringing pleasure in a very, very honest and a very, very human and a very, very correct way to people, such as the finest wines in the world or any other luxury product. Now, Philip hit the nail on the head, because it is true that many, many people that are working for us have other options which could be disastrous. And I see it in Cameroon. We work in Eastern Cameroon, where there has been a lot of gold rush, children, their parents, their grandparents being sent in caves in the soil. God knows how many people have died due to this, searching for gold. And the ones who are with us are able to sustain their families, are able to live wonderful lives, and not have to diminish themselves to becoming something that no human being in the world should do. And I think, Philip, when you spoke about immigration, and you spoke about it very nicely and very eloquently, and I actually very much agree with that definition, the danger that it can pose for the people who are immigrating particularly. There's no reason for all of this, whether it's immigrating to the gold mines or whether it's immigrating to the north. There's no reason for it. We all belong somewhere in the world, every single one of us. God has given us our home. And if that home isn't a home where we can feel comfortable, if that home's not a place where we can be happy and raise our families, because of certain factors, it's a pity. And I know what Nestor has done and his father, which is just mind-blowing, and what Tony and his family are doing, and Philip and everybody in this industry. They are making people's home a much, much better place. So that's very humbling. It's very gratifying, and it's something which people should appreciate very much, because when you are smoking a premium cigar, the pleasure should be exponential when you truly understand that it's much more than a tobacco leaf.
When you hear those words, how does it resonate with you? If I may so, I mean, all of the gentlemen here on this panel carry the flame of youth in their heart, but you in particular are part of a young generation in the tobacco and premium cigar industry. How do you think about these values? How do you think about that element of tradition and the responsibility, but in particular as a young gentleman with so much ahead of yourself, when you face young enthusiastic cigar consumers? How do you interpret it for yourself?
Again, Reinhard, thank you for having me, and like I had mentioned earlier, just to be on this panel with these gentlemen here is it's almost a little overwhelming, you know. To be honest, I feel like I don't fit in here with you guys. You know, you guys have been doing this for a long time, and you've really left your mark on the industry. And you know, I'm here trying to do that, right? And I think Jeremiah said it best. You know, it's you know, for lack of better words, it's, you know, you have a father, somebody that built something, and built something special, and then you really have to, you know, like you said, not fuck it up. You know, not but it's not even a matter of not messing it up. It's a matter of, you know, you have to earn your keep. You're doing pressure, I think, associated with being in a position like this.
Tony, I'm sorry, you were breaking up. It's probably a connection issue there. So, Philip, let me probably hand the word over to you until we get Tony back. Now, obviously, when we talk about responsibility for the people and also for the land, the title of today's panel is How the Industry Serves as Stewards of the Land. Sustainability becomes a very important aspect, and thinking about preserving the essence of nature and what Mother Nature provides us with and gifts to us. Why are environmental initiatives so important to the industry, and what more could be done to provide that element of sustainability, not just on a human and social level, but also in regards to the land that we are all caring for?
Well, I think the Native Americans have the best philosophy. We don't own the land. None of us own the land. We're just passing through. And it is our responsibility to be the caretakers of it for the next generation, for our children, for their children. So you have to have a fundamental respect for Mother Nature. And that respect has to be probably the most important thought that you have when you wake up and when you go to bed at night. Because without Mother Nature, without the land, we would not be in business. We would not be feeding our world. We would not be doing any of this. So sustainability and looking for better ways not to deplete our soils, not to burn down a tree, not to cut down trees in order to make cigar boxes, to use drip irrigation to save water, to try to use less chemicals so that we don't poison the groundwaters that communities a few kilometers down the hill might be having to drink from, are all crucial issues. And that's where we all can work, not only in our field, but in every field. Jeremiah was mentioning about the gold rush and the gold minings. The amount of toxic chemicals being thrown into that earth is disastrous for everybody, for generations to come. Nothing's going to grow there. If you look what's happened in Guyana, in north of the South American continent, where they're throwing mercury in the ground, you know, what's going to grow out of that? And we're blessed with a product that renews itself. You know, if we take care of the ground, tobacco will keep on growing. People will keep on enjoying cigars. We will provide employment for people. It's a circle. It's a circle of life. So it's really part of our essence that we have to do that. It's not really a thing that one has to think about. I mean, it's second nature. It's like breathing air. So we have to find all levels and forms and be open to all ideas of how better to farm conscientiously, and to farm in a way that we can provide the best possible product in our field, which is tobacco, but also we rotate crops as well, so we don't have to use so many chemicals. There's a number of things, Reinhard. I mean, in this panel, you would need to go into it for hours, and there's people that have more expertise in it. But I mean, that's basically the bulk, the essence of it.
Nestor, if I may, you've been one of the most innovative tobacco growers for so many years, and you have brought vision to the table, ingenuity, and also the brave heart in order to think and do things differently. What are some of the best practices and some of the very important things that you have experienced throughout your career with tobacco and cigars about how to truly take care for the land in the best way and continuously purvey and provide the finest tobaccos?
This is something that I'm so passionate about, because I learned when I was in Zamorano, as Philip was saying, I learned a lot about physics of soil and chemics of soil, but I didn't learn as much as biology from the soil. So now there's a complete world how we can know what's really on the soil, how we can know the microorganisms that are on the soil, that we can enhance the life of that microorganism, and that can make the nutrients of the soil get into the plant and makes the plant even nutrient dense, which will be flavorful dense as well. So there's a lot of things that we start scratching the surface in any agricultural crop, but we're getting into that in order to have a win-win, because you can nurture the land and you can have a better flavorful tobaccos for the consumers. And your team is so passionate about it because they know they're working for a bigger meaning again. They know that they're working for a steward of the land, for promoting the land for the next generation, as Philip was saying. I'm a big fan of quotes. And I was reading the other day a quote from Leonardo da Vinci that says, "Nature is the source of all true knowledge." And I use nature as my inspiration. There's a sign that says biomimicry, which is mimic nature. There's so many things that they're coming up, not using nature, but learning from nature. Nature has been with us for 3.8 billion years. So there's endless lessons that we still have to learn from nature. And there's so many things that we can implement in our industry that a lot of people are doing right now. But I think the way that is going, the way that is growing, for example, we are right now using a microscope on the field so we can understand the ratio between fungi and bacteria that our soil has. When we add vermicompost, that they call the earthworms the biggest alchemists in the world. You know that alchemists that convert inexpensive metal into gold, the earthworms are converting crop residues, garbages, into the most precious organic fertilizer in the world. So we have so much to learn from these creatures. And then we add that to the soil, but knowing the quality of the product that we're doing depends on the quality of the raw material that they're using. We have a thermometer. It's like a pilon of tobacco that we check in the temperature. We flip it. You put green material, brown material, high nitrogen material. So you can add, depends on the stage of growing of the tobacco, different kind of organic fertilizer in order to enhance the crop and the flavor. When I start, Reynard, in the growing tobacco, our yield was like 50% of the regular yield as a tobacco compared to the regular tobacco. Last year, we have first time higher years than a conventional tobacco in organic growing. So there's a lot of innovation. There's a lot of new things that are invented. Drip irrigation system, as Philip was saying as well, you can save 50% of the water that you use, and with better quality that just go to the root of the tobacco. So there's a lot of tools that we still have to use, but we're learning it in order to have a flavorful tobaccos, in order to have our customers happier and our people also working with less pesticides and everything. And they know that they're working with a company, with the industry that are working for the bigger meaning, and everybody want to be part of that. So you have that sense of ownership for the things that the industry is doing. And there's a lot of things that we still have to learn, but we're here. You know that I always said it's 156 years that my family's been in tobacco, as many of yours, of your gentlemen in this industry. But it's always going to be just the beginning, because there's so many things that we still have to learn and try to implement. And the drive to do it, and the drive to do it together as a team and together as an industry, it's unbelievable. And I see that more and more people get into this path. It's amazing. It is amazing. So this is just the beginning, guys. Just the beginning.
Tony, you're back, and I would like to hand the word over to you again, to please continue your thought from earlier. But I would also like to add to that. So many different aspects have been mentioned, and there's so many variables and fine little details that need to be taken into consideration when growing the finest raw materials and creating the finest cigars. And on the other hand, there's so many variables and so many little things that we need to take into consideration and think of in order to create a sustainable future for the entire industry. Whether that is tree replacement, whether that is the wood that is used for the box construction, whether it's the water conservation. What are some of the things that you have in mind there, and that you, as one of the young generation in this industry, truly want to make an impact on?
Sure, and yeah, and sorry about that. We've been having some Wi-Fi problems here today, but to continue what I was saying, you know, as these gentlemen know. It's one thing to, you know, be fortunate and be blessed and be born into a certain situation where you have an opportunity, right, that most people don't have. And it's a big responsibility, you know. It's something where you don't want anybody to ever point at you and say, oh, that guy, you know, he got lucky, his dad gave him this and that, and, you know, he got a great opportunity, a great job that he didn't deserve. That's not something you ever want. You want people to say that you contributed, that you are a valuable part of the operation, that the operation's better because of you. And you absolutely have to do that. I mean, otherwise, you know, I feel like I wouldn't respect myself, you know. I feel like I need to contribute, you know, more than anybody else, because of what you have on your shoulders, you know. You have the efforts of your father, your grandfather, etc., on top of you. And you need to make your mark, and you need to be a contributing part of the company, right? So I have that pressure on me every day. I put that on myself. It's not that anybody's putting it on me, but I like to look at things from that perspective, and I think it's important to. As for what we're discussing here, it's times are different. You know, a lot of things are changing. Weather, this, that. And this is an interesting industry because it's an industry that survives, right, and adapts no matter what you throw at it, whether it be regulations, revolutions. Now we're dealing with climate. We're dealing with a lot of things. So this is a business that will always adapt and survive whatever's thrown at it. And it's because none of us want to imagine or live in a world without cigars, right? We love them, and that's why we do what we're doing. So yeah, we're looking into a lot of things. You know, we plan to be fully solar powered, both in the farm and the factory, within the next couple years. We're looking into ways to harness, collect, store, and use rainwater as opposed to just the rivers, because we've been dealing with some droughts in Dominican Republic over the last few years. So the river, it's not the most reliable source, you know, and sometimes the governments are regulating how much water we can use, right? We try to make the best of it. You know, we pump water into our farm from a river nearby. Those pipes cut through a neighborhood where a lot of the workers on the farm actually live, and they have access to that water, you know. But we're digging, you know, we've got lagoons, we've got wells that we're creating to store rainwater so that we could use that instead of pumping from the rivers. You know, a lot of forward-looking things. Of course, we're gonna, you know, we're looking at what guys like you gentlemen are doing, and you know, we want to see the innovations that you're coming up with as really, you know, professional growers, and we want to follow, you know. So we're always looking into what's going on, who's doing what. And the good thing is now in Dominican Republic, we have a very forward-looking government that like we've never had before, especially when it comes to tobacco and also energy conservation, things like that. This is, you know, we've actually, you know, cigars have been declared a cultural heritage item in the Dominican Republic. It's got an official designation, and that's because of our current president Abinader, who, you know, unlike any president before him, has really taken our industry to heart and realized how important it is to our country. You know, we employ hundreds of thousands of people in the Dominican Republic. It's a lot of families, a lot of mouths to feed. And it's about time, I think, that somebody realizes the importance of the industry to Dominican Republic. So the Institute of Tobacco, Dominican Republic, it's there's a lot more life behind it now, and there's a lot more research, a lot of things going on. So it's for the better of the industry and for the products that we're creating.
Jeremiah, I mentioned earlier that the conditions under which your family has been growing tobacco in Cameroon are probably the most challenging you could possibly imagine in the world of tobacco. And there's so many issues that you have to deal with on a daily basis. Taking into account and into consideration what Tony just shared, that forward-thinking mentality, but at the same time preserving the delicate gift of Mother Nature. I know that is something that you have always been very vocal about, with a strong voice and the pioneering spirit. How do you think about that now? Thinking about Dilip, the gentleman you mentioned, thinking about all the families, thinking about your family heritage and the future ahead.
Listen, I feel like a caveman next to Nestor when I hear the innovations, which he's, you know, he talks about 50% yield on where he came from, and if we get 10%, we pop the champagne, you know. It's a different world. And talk about innovation, that's another one. Yeah, no, I think in that respect, we're very different. Not that we want to be particularly, but just because of the setting we work in. I mean, you know, there's no roads, there's no electricity, there's no running water. Irrigation is literally impossible in the way that things are being done, the conditions we're working in. Funny you mentioned solar power, Tony, because we had a meeting today about setting up a modern kitchen for and one of the challenges, there's no electricity. How are we going to cook without the electricity? We're trying not to use turn on a fire because it's dangerous, and we've been doing it for the last, since '69. So, and then somebody had the great idea of the solar panel. So we're trying to figure that out. But the last time we put solar panel, they were dismantled. They disappeared. They were dismantled, and we found spare parts everywhere, which nobody knew what to do with anyways. So it was challenging to say the least. Yeah, no, listen, I'm not going to be able to be very entertaining on this one, Reinhard, because I on the contrary, I mean, we're stuck in a place, stuck's not the right word. We choose to be in a place where innovation's not the what's on the top of the agenda with us. I think our main targets is to, on the contrary, is to try to find a way to sustainably improve on very old techniques in very small ways, without having the luxury of using certain technologies which people might be able to use in Central America or in the Caribbean. And that's why we're cavemen next to Nestor. That's it. That's the true reason. You know, many people say, "Oh, you're not using any fertilizers." Well, guess what? We're not able to get them to the fields anyway. So, you know, we pray for worms, Nestor.
But Jeremiah, in that also lies a tremendous chance to improve people's lives on the one hand, bring value to the communities and to the land that you're caring for.
No, absolutely. 1,000,000%. We're forced to do things a certain way, which most people in the world would just run away from. Let's be honest. But if you're into that, and if that's what you like, you know, some people like hitting themselves, and other people like cutting their fingers, and you know, we're into working in these crazy places. But if you're into that, there's extraordinary things you can do. And for example, we're starting a project now. We usually never speak about the development we do locally. It's not something we advertise. We do it very privately, and we've done it for many, many years. My father's dedicated his entire life to setting up schools and clinics and other facilities in the region of the KDI. He was named honorary minister of health and education in the Central African Republic. So this is something we've really put our hearts in doing, and we're working on this massive project right now, where we're setting up these eco villages. We're planning these villages, sustainable agriculture, sports facilities, clinics, education systems. Now, why am I mentioning this in this context is because the difference it makes, and Nestor will see this also in certain regions, in Nicaragua particularly, and Honduras, the difference it makes is wild. Because there is nothing. You need to realize this. There is no city you can drive to, or that people would be potentially able to drive to save their lives if something were to happen. We've had over the last 40 years numerous accounts where we've had to charter airplanes to go pick up people which were directly, indirectly, or not at all related to our operations, because they were dying, and there's no way in hell they would survive in that environment. It's impossible. You're in the middle of the jungle. By the time you would ever reach a semi-city, you're long gone. And so anything you do, any little step you bring forward, radically, in a positive way, changes lives, radically changes lives. We've had water projects with the Fondation Roi Baudouin, the King's Foundation in Belgium, where we supplied drinking water to hundreds of thousands of people in the region. That might seem kind of normal in some places in the world. You know, with us, in the parts of the world we work in, it's absolutely unique. No, you know, things like this don't happen. And so this is, I think, what really, I think, answers your question in terms of Cameroon, Marifel, and the pleasure we get out of kind of why would you stay in an environment which is so complicated? Because in that same challenging environment, the difference you can make is what it is. And that's extremely rewarding. And I can see Nestor nodding his head, because I know that out of that region of the world, Nicaragua, certain parts of Nicaragua and Honduras can be very, very challenging as well.
Oh, very true. Philip, you have been involved in tobacco growing and cigar manufacturing in numerous different countries, all across the Caribbean, Middle and South America. Jeremiah made such an important point and shared, like all of you on this panel today, certain elements of how people's lives have been improved, how entire families and generations have seen a ray of light and a spark of hope for them, and where entire countries have been transformed.
So Reinhard, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want to say something which is very important to, I think, all of us on this panel today. And it's something I've noticed, and I'm sure many of us have noticed this. I'm sure Tony has, Philip and Nestor. We have people working for our companies where their fathers worked for our companies and their grandfathers worked for our companies. And in some cases, their great-grandfathers have worked for our companies. And that says something. In the regions of the world that we work in, where access to education, particularly in the previous generations, was close to impossible, where access to life-sustaining treatments was close to impossible, when you see that those families attach themselves to other families, to companies, to organizations, and they attach themselves in a way where it's not only a pride of working with a company, but it's also so much more. You know, they teach their children that this is the right thing to do, because these companies, our companies, are the future for them, are the future for their lands, are the future for their education, are their future for their medicine, are the future for their families, their children, and their grandchildren. They are putting trust in us that in many cases, they don't put into their own governments, or they don't put into their own leaders, or they don't put into their, okay? And this might be a very hard thing I'm saying, or a very bold statement I'm saying, but it's a very true statement I'm saying. And, you know, that should also enlighten, you know, parts of people's questions, and at least shed some kind of light on a part of this discussion.
Philip, would you like to add anything to that? Or I wanted to ask you your experience in those various different countries that you've been involved in. What were some of the things that struck you the most in terms of how operations have evolved, the industry has evolved, and people's lives have been improved?
Well, I think the predominant fact is the love of the tobacco. In every country where people are working the land, there's a love and there's a passion. What happens is that the farmer in Nicaragua and Honduras has different ways that they grow their crop, different ways that they ferment the tobacco, compared to Costa Rica, compared to Ecuador, compared to the Dominican Republic. A quick example, in Dominican Republic, they use ranchitos, and in other parts of the world, they'll use tobacco barns. The size of the bales that are being made. So all of this is a learning process. If you are privileged enough to have been able to work in different areas, you gain advantage from all of that. And that advantage is that each one of them have a valid point, and each one of their techniques has been adapted to their terrain and in a way to their culture. And to, as Jeremiah so well put, the knowledge that these grandfathers have that worked for us, they pass us in knowledge little things that you don't learn in a school, that you don't learn by reading a book. But they'll say, you know, something silly, don't cut unless it's a full moon, or make sure, you know, you handle the leaves in this manner. And this is knowledge that comes down. And it brings it to the modern part of the equation, which Nestor was saying that he was using microscopes now to look at the biodynamics of the soil. But all of this means that we're working together as a conjunction, which is fabulous, which is fantastic, because we're sharing information. And by sharing information, there's going to be less wars. There's going to be less. We're better as a human race. And to make a final point on it, when I started in this business in the early 90s, and your panel today is something that would have been unheard of, because then the image, the people wanted to know the image of the cigar smoker, or who was the VIP guy smoking the cigar, whether it was a basketball star and a movie actor. They didn't give a damn about the guy that was making the tobacco. They didn't care. They didn't care, but now they do. Now they do. And that's a big difference, because now they'll understand that $1 million is not enough for a cigar, if you really want to put it that way. Because how many hands does it go through? How many people's lives? How many people have died? How many people have gotten sick? How many airplane flights has Jeremiah's family had to take people out? How many people has Nestor put through school? You know, how many people has Lito helped? And I know, because I've worked in the Dominican, everyone has a problem. Come payday, there's 1 million people out your door. My aunt's sick, my mother's sick, my son got run over by a car. What are you going to say? No, you can't say no. But it's not in your budget. But you got to help, because without them, you are nothing. So we've got to get this knowledge out to show that we're dealing with something that has a value, that is a much more value than the mass of consumers conceive it. It's not about a ring. It's not about packaging. It's about the labor and the art of love that goes into it. You know, Nestor could be sitting pretty. I mean, Nestor doesn't have to work in the tobacco field. I'm sure his father could set him up with a nice apartment in Paris if he wanted to, and he could sit there and go to soccer games all day long. But he wants to be in the middle of the field. The same with Tony. The same with Jeremiah. The same with me. I'm 65 years old, and I feel 30 inside of myself, and I feel even more of a child if I sit down and talk with Nestor Senior, because I don't know anything. So it's the passion that makes the whole difference. So. And there's so many more things that we can do. I just wanted to end on a little note here. I always put a paragon between tobacco and wine. Before, when I started going to university in the United States in the 70s, there was only 2 wines. There was Blue Nun from Germany and Riuniti, which was a communist cooperative in Italy. So the only 2 wines out there. No one heard of New Zealand. No one heard of Chile. But now, great wines are coming from everywhere. Why? The future of tobacco could be that way too. Maybe people will start growing tobacco in areas that we don't know of yet, because there's an interest, because someone has picked up a cigar, smoked one of Nestor's, smoked one of Lito's, smoked one of Jeremiah's cigars, and say, well, look, maybe I can do something in northern Argentina, which the soils are great. Why don't we try? So we're evolving, and it's beautiful, because we are also, one other point, where everyone's talking about carbon. How much carbon are we managing to hold with our tobacco fields? We're doing something for the world, but most people view us as bad guys because we're creating smoke. But we're doing a lot. We're doing a lot. All those tobacco fields, if they were cut down, where would the carbon output be then?
It's fascinating to listen to you, gentlemen. Feel the love and feel the passion that you carry in your hearts, and that your families for generations have blessed this industry with. It makes me grateful, and it's very humbling to experience that. And that's why I think it's so critically important that days like today happen. Initiatives like today from the Premium Cigar Association are so important to share and to make people aware of why what we all are doing is so important and so meaningful to many people all around the world. And yes, we can do better, and we all need to do better in order to make this relevant for generations to come. Nestor, I would love to hand over the microphone to you to finish today's session and to hear what is your vision, what is your dream, and what are your hopes where we all need to improve and what we can do better in order to live up to the promise that we have given ourselves and that we need to give to the world and to the premium cigar community every single day to live up to the expectation that we're all stewards to the land.
First, I'm enjoying this panel very much, but I see the passion that all of us has for this beautiful industry and the perspective that we see. I'm a very optimistic guy. I see just opportunities, creating new ways to improve the soil, to improve how we take care of nature, how we learn more from nature, how we go into different places, as Philip was saying, discover new regions within the country that we are, or going to a different country. There's endless opportunities that we have, but the common ground that we have is that we doing with care and thinking not just on today, but thinking in the generations for the future, and thinking that we're working for a bigger meaning that the final consumer is gonna enjoy. This is a crazy world right now. If we start watching the news every day, you're gonna get depressed also. So I think with the product that we're making, we are enhancing the life of the people, at least for 2 hours, 1 hour and a half, when they're trying our cigars. So that's something that, that you are taking the people away from all this craziness that are in the world. But I want to focus on the good things that are in the world. And there's so many good things in the world that don't come in the news. And especially what we're doing in this industry with the people, with the communities, with everything, it's not that much to talk about. And adding to what Jeremiah was saying, is that I believe that the businesses, that the private sector has an incredible responsibility to improve people's life. We cannot let that responsibility just for the governments, whatever the government is. I think the businesses, we all have a huge responsibility to improve people's life, our people that work together within the communities that we are, because that's the only way that we're gonna be sustainable for the future. If we don't do this kind of stuff, it's not gonna be a business. There's gonna be a world. There's gonna be nothing. So we have to start doing. We have to start doing. There's a I think it's an African proverb that says that the best time to plant a tree was 25 years ago. But the second best time to plant a tree is today. So we have to start planting trees today in order for the next generation gonna get the benefits of all those trees that we're growing today, that we're planting today. But I see just opportunities. I see just great things that are coming, especially listening to all these gentlemen over here, the approach that we haven't seen the industry. We have the blessed to work with a lot of people in this industry with that mentality as well. And there's so many good things that still have to come, and we're working for that. So really, thank you from the bottom of my heart for inviting me to this amazing panel, Reinhard. And thank you guys for being together with us today.
Likewise.
Mr. Andres Plasencia, Philip Wynn, Tony Gomez, Jeremiah Marapol. I would like to thank all of you on behalf of cigar lovers all around the world for everything that you do on a daily basis, and all the other ladies and gentlemen in the premium tobacco and premium cigar industry. What you do is incredible, and it needs to be shared with the world. And I hope that today's panel was a small opportunity to share those important values and those rays of light. They are greatly appreciated, and they are more necessary and relevant than ever before in today's day and age. Thanks to all of you for your wonderful words, and in particular, a massive thank you to the Premium Cigar Association, to Ryan and his tremendous team for putting this special day together and allowing us the opportunity to share some of those tremendously important insights into the land, the soil, and the world that you all give your heart and soul for. So many, many thanks to all of you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be gone.
Gentlemen, good night. Good day.
Good night. Good day.
Thank you very much.
Have a great day.
Thank you so much to Reinhard and all of his great panelists. That was an amazing panel. To close out today's International Policy Summit, the Premium Cigar Association is honored to be joined today by the Ambassador to the United States from the Dominican Republic, Ms. Sona Guzman.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to the persons that joined me in this room today, all the cigars lovers, and thank you for to the Premium Cigar Association to invite me to this space this afternoon in this important event. It's an honor for me to participate in the second International Policy Summit hosted by the Premium Cigar Association. For the Dominican Republic, the forum is an excellent opportunity to discuss a broad range of important issues for premium tobacco, including tax, trade, and positive impact of the industry in the communities all around the world. As you know, the Dominican Republic is the leading exporter of premium cigars in the world, and this is no coincidence. Our law and involvement with tobacco dates back centuries, as tobacco was part of the culture of our indigenous people. Today, the Dominican Republic sees the industry not only as an important exporting product or a generator of wealth for our people, but as an intrinsic manifestation of our culture. Tobacco for us is a true representation of the richness of our land and a testimony to the hard work of thousands of Dominicans. I would like to highlight some important aspects of this important of tobacco industry for Dominican Republic. In 1921, Dominican tobacco exports totally $1.2 billion in exports. Last year, we were the first time in history that our cigar exportation surpassed the billion-dollar market. This incredible performance represents a 32% increase compared with 2020 and a 30% increase compared with 2019. Of course, the US is the most important market for our cigars, with 90% of our global exportation, followed by other destinations in the European Union. Last year, the tobacco industry generated around 150,000 direct and indirect jobs. However, the economic impact of the industry extends beyond a source of jobs, as companies invest privately in the physical and social infrastructure of the community, including healthcare services. A total of 121 companies related to the processing and manufacturing of tobacco products operate in the Dominican Republic. 18 of them are of US capital. These companies account for 14% of all the companies installed in our free zone regime. As you all can realize, the economic family that direct or indirectly depend on the tobacco industry. For this reason, the embassy has worked closely this year with organizations such as PCA and other stakeholders to present a unified voice on the potential effects of some critical measures that were being considered by U.S. tobacco regulators and the U.S. Congress. Two of them, in particular, the tobacco tax proposal and the proposed product standard to ban all characterization flavor in cigars, will have nearly killed our industry. Raw estimate found that the tax increase will have reduced our cigar export to the U.S. by nearly $650 million just the first year, while the flavor ban would have resulted in a loss of brand identity of dozens of companies. Dear friends, the industry will certainly have more challenges in the upcoming years. For this reason, we must continue to be vigilant and to work together in presenting the real facts of the industry that keeps getting unjustly targeted by a one-size-fits-all regulatory framework that aims to regulate all tobacco products, including cigars of any size. I would like to thank once again the Premium Cigar Association for being a strong advocate and ally of the industry and a very close friend of the Dominican Republic and other producing countries. As I mentioned last night, thanks to you, to your help, it has been possible to overcome a lot of domestic challenges faced by the industry in recent years. I'm confident that our cooperation will only grow stronger over the years and as we embark on expanding our presence to other countries of the world. Thank you, and thank you for hearing me and to receive me here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much to Ambassador Guzman for the very kind and encouraging words. I'd like to thank the embassy and the ambassador and all of her staff for the very generous measures that they've taken over the past few months and all of the hard work that we've done together. Thank you, everybody viewing at home, and thank you for everybody joining us today. This will now conclude our International Policy Summit. Thank you, everyone.
Gotcha. I got it in my phone. Saved on the cigar shops. Yeah.